We're going to start off. Stephen New has an announcement to make, and then I'm going to come back up and say something to you for a second before worship.
Thank you. Okay, I just have like 1 minute to talk to you guys. Okay, so there's a school downtown that normally does a chocolate strawberry bake sale kind of thing for Valentine's Day, and it raises majority of their money for their school and everything like that. So because of all the snow days and everything, it got pretty much kicked out, and they couldn't do it, so they really have no money at this point. So we're going to do that in a couple weeks for Mother's Day. I know all of us always forget about Mother's Day, so it'll be great to have this chance to be able to buy this for our mothers. So if you guys are interested in helping out in any way, just come and talk to me or Mr. Petrick if you get a chance, and just be thinking about this. Thank you.
Okay, so spiritual emphasis week was great, and I remember even talking to a few teachers during that week about how well you all behaved and how beautiful that was to not have to worry about that. But since that time, I have just noticed more and more as I'm sitting here during chapel, I find myself sitting there thinking, this behavior is not good and somebody needs to say something. And as the weeks have gone on, it has gotten a little worse, and I know it's springtime, but, and you have to understand, I don't like to be up front talking in a microphone. I really don't like it, but unexpectedly, I was asked to come up and get chapel started today. So my thinking was, if somebody needs to say something and the Lord has handed me a microphone that I really didn't want, maybe I'm somebody. So I would just ask you to think about during worship, this is time that we've taken as a school to worship the Lord of the universe, the creator of everything. There's a whole lot of talking and goofing on that goes on during worship. If I were God, that would make me sad. This is time that we've taken to tell the Lord how much we love him, how wonderful we think he is, to thank him for all he's done for us. And it's just hard for me to believe that you and the person next to you have something to talk about that's more important than that. I think it's very sad. Last week over in this part, and I don't know who was sitting here, but there was so much talking during worship that when the music ended, the talking kept going, and I just couldn't believe the noise. That's very distracting to people who are trying to worship the Lord. Teachers don't enjoy sitting here and telling you to be quiet. We want to worship. So I hope you have a heart to worship, but if you don't, please have a heart to be quiet so that the people around you who want to can worship. Thank you.
Well, let's worship.
Michael Clark was one of my students. He was in 8th grade during my first year. I went on to have him in class 2 more years in high school because we both moved up, and I had him in chemistry, and then the next year I had him in Chem 2, which is what we had before we took the plunge and went to AP Chem. So Michael and I were chatting a little bit on Facebook last night, and he told me to feel free to share whatever I liked. The things I remember most about him, he was zealous for the Lord. When he was in high school, he did all he could just to make an impact for the Lord. He was never afraid to talk about what the Lord was doing in his life. It was very inspiring to those of us who knew him. His senior year, those of you who think you have a heavy academic load, Michael took physics with Mr. Reeves, Chem 2 with me, and advanced biology, which was Bio 2 with Mrs. Stanford. So we want to talk about stress. That was stress. But it didn't seem like it ever got to him, and I think he was pretty sure then that he was not going into a field where he needed all of that science. So it was more of a stretching himself and wanting to learn and understand the world around him. So I'm going to stop talking, but everybody knows teachers are not supposed to have favorites. But if we were, I would have to say that Michael Clark, our speaker, is on my short list.
I don't think I'm on. There we are. How are you guys doing this morning? All right, thank you, Miss Sire. I sound like a big nerd now. Took a bunch of science classes that I didn't need. That's right. Well, this morning I'm sharing something that's really near and dear to my heart, and you might have heard some of this because it's a shared message with my youth pastor because it's close to both of us, and we've kind of collaborated on a number of things. I go to Park West Church over here on Middlebrook, and I recognize a few faces. There we go, Hal. Yeah, I saw you up there. But something that's really near and dear to me is community, is living life together. And as you can see right there, we're going to be talking about better together. And I mean, we got milk and cookies. What could be better than that, right? I mean, some warm cookies just came out of the oven. You can smell them. When my wife and I were dating, we had this tradition where we would go get those Reese's peanut butter cup cookies. You know what I'm talking about? They would melt, be a little crunchy on the outside, still soft in the middle, perfect. But you got to have a big, tall glass of some cold skim milk. Don't go with that whole milk stuff. Sorry if you're lactose intolerant because almond milk is nasty, all right? I don't care what you say. We had to try that for my daughter, and there's nothing you can add to it to make it any better. I tried. So anyways, enjoy the skim milk and take a pill, all right? Because life is better together when you're enjoying some milk and cookies, all right? So this morning, I'm not going to share a whole lot about what I do now, but I do want to tell you a little bit. This is totally out of my comfort zone. A bunch of white kids, honestly, is out of my comfort zone. I work in downtown Knoxville, where I grew up. I grew up in East Knoxville. And let's just be honest, I was the only kid I knew that drove from East Knoxville to come to school here. Only kid I knew at the time. And it was really bizarre because I didn't get a lot of the West Knoxville lingo and the things that were important out here, I guess. It was totally different where I grew up, even though it was in the same town. So I may share a little bit different than what you're used to, and maybe the way even you hear it at your youth group at church, all right? So just bear with me. I like interaction, though. Is that cool? Can y'all talk with me? Does that sound good? Does that sound good, Purple Boots? All right, good. Let's go with it. So we're going to be talking a little bit, like I said, how life is better. Excuse me, frogs in my throat. How life is better together, okay? And this is going to be a family meeting, so show of hands, let's get some interaction. If you consider yourselves an honest follower of Jesus, a Christian, I mean, this is pretty simple. You can just raise your hand for me. And I don't expect to see all hands, okay? I realize when I came to a Christian school, not everybody would consider themselves a Christian. But so I'm going to be talking to you guys. I'm going to be talking to you that raised your hand. Now, you guys are in on a family meeting, so to speak, where you're going to hear some things that we can all learn from, I can learn from, we can all grow from. But really, it's applicable and it pertains to us that are saying, yeah, I'm following him. I'm following Jesus. And so the rest of you just kind of sit tight. Just kind of listen, see what you get out of it. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad your parents made you come to CAK, as many of them do, right? My parents made me come here and made me take 3 sciences my senior year. So whatever it may be for you, just check it out. Just listen in. But let me tell you how I ended up at CAK, because I did not want to come here. I was at Berean, if you've heard of it. I was at Berean, 1st through 6th grade, and they didn't go past 8th grade. It was a travesty. They didn't have a high school. And my sister was older than me. She had already aged out, and she tried another school and then finally ended up here at CAK when the high school is the middle school. And so I ended up having to come here too, just because transportation would be easier that way. Well, it gave me a chance to completely reinvent myself because at Berean, the teachers did not look forward to having me in their class. I'm pretty sure we sent a couple of them into early retirement. There were a few that they were like, oh no, not this class. I've heard about them. And so when I came here, nobody expected me to be a class clown. Nobody expected me to act up. Nobody expected me to be a certain way. And I had grown up. I'm getting a bottle of water. Thank you. I must need it. Nobody expected me to act a certain way when I came here, and I had the opportunity to completely decide who I was going to be. I played soccer, so I started on the soccer team. Anybody on the soccer team here? Must be a really small team. I see 5. You guys don't even have a full squad. Maybe you could be on my daughter's U6 team that I'm coaching because we play 3-on-3. But that's about it. I don't know how y'all have a full team. So I was on the soccer team, and that was my first clique. That was my first group. I could automatically, bam, I was in. And everybody knows the soccer kids are cool, right? Forget baseball, the pansies who play football, whatever. It was soccer because we can run faster, further, longer, all that, all right? You got to be in shape. I'm not anymore, but anyways. So I was in with that group, and nobody was still expecting. It seemed like all the roles had already been filled in the class. Didn't need another class clown. Didn't need someone who was acting up in class. Didn't need any of those things. Those were already decided. We had Adam Russell. We had Nathaniel. We had all these people. All the roles were filled. So I could decide who I was going to be. I'm not going to bring up Brent Lynn. I won't bring him up. He was a good kid, okay? So a couple of us were already together, though, from soccer. But something started to happen between my 8th grade and 9th grade year because I had grown up in Christian school. I had grown up in church. I went because my parents made me. I had memorized the verse. I was even enthusiastic about it when I was young. But it was never mine. It was never personal for me. And something began to happen that summer between my 8th and 9th grade year. I was really looking up to my youth leaders in my youth group. I remember that what he had, I knew I didn't. His enthusiasm, just how real it was to him. I knew when I read the Bible, it was for an assignment. And it wasn't because I wanted to. It wasn't because I had this relationship with Jesus and I wanted to just be involved with him. And so that began to change, though, for me that summer. And when I came back my 9th grade year, I was trying to figure out, okay, what does this look like now for me? And I made some mistakes. You heard Miss Sire, she put it very nicely. I was very zealous for the Lord. I felt like the experiences I was having with God that no one else was having and that they didn't understand. So I began to isolate myself. This may not be your story, but I want you to think about the process that sometimes we go through. We go through experiences. It could be something difficult. It could be a tragedy in our family. It could be something that's a victory. It could be a team we're on. And we begin to isolate ourselves and say, you know what, no one else really understands, or I don't need them to understand because I've got me and mine, we're good. And if there were some regrets I have, it was that I didn't do things more together, that I kept my arm's distance even from my own classmates. Yeah, we had the cliques, we had the groups, these were the popular kids, and I took 3 sciences, so I'm not sure if I was in that group. No, I was kind of in that group. I played on soccer team, remember? That was cool. So we had all those things, but I isolated myself on my own, not because of them, not because of how I acted, not because of what I was going to say up and down the halls as far as about my beliefs or stand up for what was right or whatever. I chose to do that on my own, and I want to challenge you guys about living life together, about breaking down some walls this morning. So will you guys go on a journey with me? Okay, that was the soccer team. That was the 5. Will you guys just walk with me a little bit? And sometimes this is a risk. It's a risk that you might get rejected by someone you thought was even beneath you. Wow, that's vulnerable. That feels awkward because they've already sized you up as that person who's written them off. And so why do they want to engage with you? Well, you've got to prove yourself. But I want to challenge you to take some risk to break down some of the barriers in your class, in maybe your church, wherever it may be, right here even. I think we can apply this, that we can break down some of the walls and live life better together. So how do we do this? There's this thing, though, that left inside of me from my experience when I was walking up and down these halls, and that was this thing called community. That there's this thing that I was longing for, that I wanted more of. I wanted to be more connected to my classmates. I wanted to not just be invited to certain things, but to actually have that relationship with them where they were sharing things that were important to them, and the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole thing. And this is something that has carried with me the rest of my life to this point today. And I'm only 23, right? I'm pretty young, Messiah. I graduated in 2000. So this thing called community is so important to me that regardless of how busy I am, since I was 15, I've led a small group. My wife and I are getting ready. I saw someone that's in my small group that was in the kitchen this morning. We're kicking a new one off this coming Monday. This is something that is a part of our life. Community. How do we do this together? How do we do this together? And it's so important to me. I try to create this culture where I work in downtown Knoxville with the students I have there. How do we create a community where we've got each other's backs, that we can share the good, the bad, the ugly? Because I think deep down inside each one of us, it's what we want. It's what we want. And let me tell you what I told my seniors when they're getting ready to graduate. Everything that matters to you today won't tomorrow. As soon as you walk across that stage, you flip your tassel, you grab that diploma, everything that was so important up and down these halls, all of a sudden you're like, it's not. It's really not. And it's crazy. I see some heads and you're like, oh my goodness, so true. It doesn't, the things that are important right now, honestly, among you and your friends, what group you're in, how you're connected, whatever it may be, the fact that you sit at the same table in the same seat at lunch, that really won't even matter after high school. You're going to look back and you're going to think, how stupid was that? That I wouldn't even sit with someone else at lunchtime? Really? You're going to realize that what I'm saying to you right now is so true. I was talking to one of my best friends back here. Jamarcus, just say hey. Hey, he doesn't like to be pointed out. Jamarcus has grown up with me. I've known him since he was 7. And he's like, I feel like I'm his big brother that he never wanted. But we were talking about this morning that before he graduated, I was like, Jamarcus, you don't realize everything right now that you feel like is important, it's not going to be. And he's like, man, you were so right about that. And so I want to challenge us all to do this thing together, because life is meant to be done together, right? I mean, I could have cookies by myself, and I could have a glass of milk, not almond milk, not even soy milk, true glass of milk by myself, but I'd rather share it with somebody on the couch watching a movie. I'd rather, it's a rainy day, we're not going to go outside, we had a too long winter, let's have some milk and cookies and just chill. And it's so much better together. And think about it. When God created Adam, did he say it was good when Adam was alone? What did he say? He said it wasn't good. And so he created who? You guys know. Eve. Eve popped out from a rib. Don't ask where he popped out from Adam. So you get Adam because it wasn't good that Adam was alone. Because from the very beginning, life was meant to be done together. It was meant to be done together. Think about it. You got five guys on the squad at the soccer team here. But let's say you got one on the baseball team. How do you pass the ball by yourself? How do you go out and play Frisbee ultimate of a team of one? I mean, it's not meant to be done by yourself. It's meant to be done in groups. It's meant to be done together. It's meant to be done as a team. It's meant to be done as one, but more than one. So by design, I think about how we're made, and this thing of community, this thing that is meant to be done together, it doesn't happen by accident. How many of you have actually just stumbled into a best friend? You've stumbled into a good friendship. I mean, did it take some time maybe to build up trust? Maybe y'all hit it off at first, I give you that, okay? Y'all decided that you both had all these things in common, whatever it may be, but it's maybe taken time to be absolute best friends. Think about it. If I decided I was going to drive a nail with my cell phone this morning, what a tragedy that would be. First of all, I don't have a backup phone right now. I don't want to upgrade with Verizon. They'll take away my unlimited data. That's beside the point. That's my own soapbox. But anyway, so if I went to drive the nail with this cell phone, it's done. You guys know. And so I'm going to have one of your iPhones, because that's really what I want. And so if you'll go ahead and get that out, Ms. Snyder said I could take up a collection of any phones I saw this morning. It needs to be Verizon, please. So if I drove that nail in with the cell phone, it's done. It wasn't intended to do that. And when we get this thing called community, I feel like it's so fragile, even though it doesn't happen on purpose, even though we have to be intentional about it, even though we may actually have to get up and go to a different seat during lunch, even though we may have to do something that is a risk that we're uncomfortable with, it's so worth it. And once we get it, it's so fragile. How many of you guys have been, don't raise your hand, please, they may be in this room. You've been in a close friendship and it's just gone wrong. Something happened. There was a misunderstanding. You felt like you got stabbed in the back, whatever it may be. I'm sorry if they are in this room because that's really uncomfortable. But that happens because this thing that is called community, that is meant to be done together, relationships, it can be so easily broken. It's taken me years. I've been married for 8 years this May. It's taken us years to get to the point of where we're at now in our relationship, my wife and I. And I could lose all that in a minute with some really stupid choices. I could forfeit all the efforts I've made, all the intentional things I've done to just love on her, to treat her like she's a queen. I could lose all that in a moment if I just decided to be stupid for a second. This thing called community, this thing that I feel like each of us deep down really desire, once we actually do get it, just be careful. Be willing to work with others that are different than you. Be willing to reach out to people that aren't like you and to recognize that, guess what? This might get a little weird. There might be some misunderstandings. There might be some bumps in the road that I'm not expecting because we're human. And so I want us to look at a passage. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want us to look at what Jesus has to say about this. And it's John 17. Now, you guys have heard of the Lord's Prayer, right? That's where Jesus is teaching us how to pray. I really feel like this is the Lord's Prayer because this is where he's actually praying. And it's considered the high priestly prayer. Let me give you a little bit of context. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's about to be arrested, right? And after he's arrested, they're going to toss him on the cross. And so these are some pretty important words. You think about when you go to visit someone and they know they're on their deathbed. They know that these are their final breaths. It's like they're making every minute count. Every word is just totally loaded. It's weighty. And so you're remembering every word that they say. This is where Jesus is at. And so everything that he is saying right now, even in his prayer with his disciples around him, these are his homies. These are the people that are closest to him. He had his time to talk to the crowds, but that's not this moment right now. He's got those that love him because that's who we want in our last moments. That's who we would like to have around our bed, so to speak. And so this is what he says to them. He says in John 17, starting in verse 9, I pray for them. I am not praying for the world, but for those you have given me, for they are yours. All I have is yours, and all you have is mine. And glory has come to me through them. I will remain in the world no longer, but they are still in the world, and I am coming to you. So first off, in that verse 9, he's praying for you guys. He's praying for us. He's praying for us that we will get it. And what is he asking that we'll get it? That we'll get God's community. Because check out what he prays. He says, Holy Father, protect them by the power of your name, the name you have given me, so that they may be one as we are one. I'm sorry, math teachers, there is something I cannot explain in the economy of God that 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. I don't understand it. I accept that there are 3 individual persons in one person. But here, God the Father is receiving a prayer from God the Son. And Jesus is asking, it's talking about the Spirit that would even fill his disciples. Even within God, there's this nature of community. That there's this sharedness. That life is even better together within God. That's why I think it's so important that we get this Adam and Eve thing right. Because it's not so much that it was just about Adam, it was about multiples becoming one and the symbolism that has even to who God is. So God, even in his nature, even in his diversity, he has no division. And even though they have different roles, there's still just one goal. And do I feel like we're there yet, that we're living in some sort of some sort of hypothetical community? I can't say the word right now. No, I don't. Thank you. Golly, I still can't say it. I'm not going to try. Thank you, though, what he said. You guys recognize the cliques that are around you. Come on, let's just be honest. You guys I remember what it was like walking up and down these halls. You exclude some, you include others. This could be the worst thing for us to portray as the image of God. One of the worst things. Because if there's anything that Jesus wants to leave with us, it's this, that we would be one, even as He, God, is one. So how do we do that? What's that look like? Good question. I'm so glad you guys asked. Because there's going to be some pushback. And that's why I think Jesus says this later on in John 17, that I have given them your word, and the world has hated them, for they are not of the world any more than I am of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. And I think that how this all ties together is that, man, the enemy's going to go after anytime you start crossing lines, anytime you start building some sort of unity. And we'll have things that happen in our community and even here at school that all of a sudden it seems like we're getting along better, or something will happen that will create a community for a moment. But remember, you don't stumble into this. This is something you have to be intentional about and be willing to say, you know what? Maybe the things that I thought are important and that I thought matter really don't. Maybe this is something that I need to give an honest try. If it's that important to Jesus, that these were His last words, that I could even somehow be one with those that I go to school with. Seniors with freshmen, those that are on the sports team with those that aren't. And let's be honest, we don't like to do this because it's uncomfortable, and it might cost us. It might cost us some popularity points, whatever it may be. It may cost us some friends that we thought we had, because now we actually want to spend some time with people that we see on the outside, that we see alone, that we see by themselves. It will cost you. So how do we begin this? Well, I think there's a few things that we can do. I think this week I want to challenge each of you guys to take one communal risk. So what does that mean? For those of you that maybe your parents are making you come here and you're just kind of checking it out, why don't you ask one of your friends if you can come to church with them? Why don't you talk to them that you know have a relationship with the Lord and say, hey, what's this all about? I'm not even sure I'm really interested. But let me just be honest up front, whatever it may be. Take that first step if that's where you're at. Now, maybe you're already involved. Maybe you're involved here at school in a Bible study. I saw that there's a girls' Bible study at Cedar Springs from 4 to 6. There's your announcement for that. There was a sign out front. And also, you can buy a cupcake. That was on the other side. I don't think they're at the same place, though. Maybe you're already plugged in somewhere. Be a part of a group. Join a group. Get involved a little bit deeper. Take one communal risk. Take one risk this week to be involved in someone else's life that you're not involved with right now. I'm not talking about the ones that you sit with every day, that you see in every class. I'm talking about a risk. Take a risk and just see what happens. Maybe you're already involved in a small group. Well, maybe God's asking you to lead one. Maybe you're in a Bible study. Maybe you're captain on, maybe you're the one of 5 on the soccer team and you're the captain, though. And so God's asking you to maybe rally around those guys and say, you know what? I just want to share what's going on in my heart. Take a risk of being vulnerable. Take a risk wherever you find yourself in this process. Wherever you think you land on the map, just take one risk. That would be my challenge, to take one risk. Why? Because I think life is better together. Life is better together because life is meant to be done together. Not meant to go alone in this world and face the challenges we face, go through the victories that we get to celebrate about by ourselves. It's so much better together. So with that being said, I have some milk and I don't have any milk and cookies for you guys. I know. You especially were excited about them earlier. No milk and cookies, but I do want to challenge you guys. Do you guys think you could take one risk this week? Do you guys think you could do one thing that would be out of your comfort zone? To reach out to someone that maybe you don't normally talk to take one risk. Take one risk. I want to pray with you guys. Father, I just thank you for the opportunity to come and share. As nervous and freaked out as I was to come back to my old high school, God, I pray that you have spoken through me this morning, and that wherever each of these students are, only you know, God. I pray that you would take the words that have been spoken, even from your word, and let your Spirit just divide it up and make it personal to each and every one of us. God, let us be willing to take that risk to see your prayer fulfilled, that we would be one, even as you and the Father are one. God, help us break down these barriers, these walls that we have built, even in ways that we have isolated ourselves like I did. God, help us to be willing to take that step, that risk, because we know that life is better together. I love you, Lord, and I thank you for your grace and mercy. Experience each and every day. In your name, amen. Thank you, guys.